Welcome to another edition of CHP Talks. We are talking today with Jakki Jeffs about the Guelph and Area Right to Life, the judicial review, and about the Abortion Rights Coalition. So with that, Rod, do you want to introduce our special guest for today?
Well, yes, it's great to have you with us today, Jakki. I know that you're busy, so thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Oh, you're welcome, and I'd love to be with you, Rod and Peter.
Yeah, thank you. And just for those who don't know, Jakki Jeffs is the Executive Director of Alliance for Life Ontario. She lives in the City of Guelph, Ontario, which is currently the center of controversy, which we'll be discussing in a few minutes. She is a child of God, a Christian, and she and Paul have been married for 53 years. They have two children, Lisa and Robin. Jakki has been involved in the educational pro-life movement in Canada since 1985, and she became the Executive Director of Alliance for Life Ontario in 1989. She has written, researched, and presented at all government levels on a range of pro-life issues. She's been interviewed on radio and television regarding pro-life efforts in Ontario particularly. She has arranged 30 annual pro-life conferences, so that's always a challenge to arranging a conference. She's the founding president of Michael House Pregnancy Home, founding chair of the Garden of Grace, which is dedicated to children who died before birth by either abortion or miscarriage, and she's active in her Roman Catholic community. So again, Jakki, it's really a pleasure to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rod.
So I don't know if it was mentioned there, but I understand that you're the past president of the Guelph and Area Right to Life. So you have roots within this group that is now has just undergone a judicial review. We don't have the result of it yet, but can you tell us how we got to the point that we were at with the judicial review that just happened, and maybe looking forward?
Okay. Well, I was president, I should have put that in, I guess, of Guelph Right to Life from 1985 to 2016. And this really began, I guess, around about the end of 2013 for us regarding our bus ads. We've been placing bus ads on Guelph Transit since the year 2000 and still continuing today. And there was a rumor that there was a petition being gathered because we got some ads on the buses again, as we always did. And there was somebody at the University of Guelph, a student or students who were putting this petition together. And so we had a little speak out to our members and said, please tell the mayor that our ad should stay on. So she wrote to us on January the 17th. And she said, I want to assure you that the city is taking no action to remove or prohibit these ads. We are aware there is a legal precedent to suggest the city as a public institution cannot decline an organization's purchase of ad space because there is disagreement with the political position put forward in the ad. To do so would be in contravention of the right to freedom of expression in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The last piece she asked me was, I would welcome your assistance in communicating this message to your supporters, because quite a number of them had been in touch with the city and the mayor, and they were, I think, a little, I'm not reading in, but a little tired of our letters and emails and phone calls. And that sort of happened early on in the year. And then in June of 2014, it was Saturday morning, I remember, I got a phone call from a reporter from the Mercury just to say, what are you doing about what's happening with your ads? And I said, well, what's that? And she said, well, the city are looking at introducing a new policy. They're having a meeting. They've got this 3,000 signed petition that wants your ads off. Are you doing anything about it? And I said, like we hadn't been told, so I didn't know. So I said, well, sure, we'll go take a look and we'll do something. And apparently there were 9 formal complaints that had happened between the beginning of 2014 and then. And so, and basically what was being said is that I just don't understand this. But nevertheless, because the city had allowed our bus ads on, it meant that this implied that the city was pro-life. And oh my gosh, we can't have that, can we? So now we have to do something about it. I mean, it really is a rather silly position to take, but nevertheless, they took it. And there was a meeting of a committee, corporations, I'm going to forget the name of the committee. Anyway, it was a city committee that was going to have a look at the ads and see what the staff would do. So we had people then write to the head of this particular committee. And in one of, again, the head of the committee, June Hoffland, at that time, she replied to one of our members, thanking her for her feedback, but again, reiterating, we are aware that there is a legal precedent to suggest that the city cannot decline an organization's purchase of ad space when there is a difference of political opinion. To do so would be in contravention of the right to freedom of expression in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And yet, quite honestly, in the presentation that we heard this week, it was almost as though, sorry, but the city had forgotten these statements and forgotten that there was a charter which I still believe has to override ad standards, Canada's decisions or codes on anything. But nevertheless, so we end up, the petitioners were given, I believe it was 15 minutes. We literally had a couple of days to get ready because I think it was the Saturday and we had to have everything in by the Monday of what we were going to say and asking to delegate. So we did. We got that done and we went and we prepared and I wrote a not hugely long brief, but quite a big brief. And it was with regard to the new policy that the staff was suggesting. It wasn't the actual end policy, but it was what they were suggesting would go in it. And I sort of brought to the city's attention our freedom of expression, and I mean, and I had to research that. You don't go in there with it all in your head. You don't know it. And then one of the things I actually came across was a thing called the heckler's veto, which is a legal expression, but it's also used outside because the city, I believe, were being harassed at the time and there was damage being done to the buses, like paint spray on our ads and things. And so the heckler's veto, it sort of looks at when governments sort of give up supporting the rights of citizens because they're afraid of how the group that doesn't like what they say or what they do, what they stand for, threatens to do damage or violent things. And there was no threatening in the sense of we are going to do this, but the way they were behaving towards the ads and the buses, I think, put the city in a bit of a situation. And one of the things we were a bit bothered about was the fact that we are a charitable organisation, and there was a non-profit costing for the bus ads at that time, which was quite a lot less than if you were a business. And that was one of the things that was taken out. And, my comment, because I usually speak before I think, but nevertheless, I do it. They're trying to get rid of us by, financing us out of this, because it meant that we would have to pay double, 900 instead of 450 for these ads that we had. And at that time, I think it was about 14,000 a year we were spending. And they had non-profit ads, but I think they only had 6 non-profit ads, and we had 4 of them. So we weren't a little piece, and generally our money, I think we spend around 35,000 on those now a year on those ads. So anyway, it all came out of that we ended up with, we got a 5-minute presentation, we did what we could. Then this new policy came out that included Ad Standards Canada code. And, we'd made our comments then. I mean, we were accused of not saying anything about the policy in yesterday's hearings, actually. But we did. We made it right at the very beginning. But I guess that's all water under the bridge. So basically, that's the run up. And over the years, we've had more and more and more consistent, not more in numbers, but just consistent opposition to everything we do, let alone this. Even our Garden of Grace. You know, they couldn't even give you a space for parents to go and be concerned and try and have some reconciliation with their babies that they've lost.
Yeah. So Jakki, I think most of our listeners would have an idea. Many are supporting our efforts, our intervention in this case that was heard yesterday.
It was wonderful.
Guelph. But maybe a little review of that is in order. Just we listened via Facebook Live, I guess, and the arguments for and against the right of Guelph Right to Life to run ads currently on the city buses in Guelph, and it was pretty interesting to us. Both the lawyer for Guelph Right to Life and the lawyer for the city of Guelph, along with the interveners. And of course, our part was to have John Sycamore intervening on behalf of CHP Canada. Mm-hmm. And then ARPA had Tabitha Ewart. But anyway, maybe you can...
so grateful to all of them.
Yeah, describe a little bit your perspective of what took place yesterday in the courtroom. We weren't allowed to record it, of course.
No, I know. It's so bad, isn't it? Well, I got wrist ache making my notes. But I was so proud of Tabitha and John and Carol. I mean, it was wonderful because it showed you we have a team. You know, we have a team, and they all came at it from different areas, but all important areas, I think. But I think basically what we've all understood, especially with the Abortion Rights Coalition presentation, and sadly it seems that the Guelph city appeared to me to side much more with the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada.
If I can just take a little sidestep, as Rod mentioned, ARPA, Association for Reform Political Action, was an intervener on the side of Guelph and Area Right to Life, as was CHP through our lawyer John Sycamore. On the other side, there was one intervener, and it was the Abortion Rights Coalition. So just want to get that there, and then we. One other little explainer is the Ad Standards it's Ad Standards Canada, but it's not a government body. It's not a national council with a sort of legal weight. It is a private organization, a self-regulatory association of ads producers, etc. So just to get that little bit of background, and then if we can continue to where we were with the judicial review.
Yeah, and people sign on to be bound by that code. You know, there's television stations, radio stations, and businesses, Patterson, and all of the other media you want to think about sign on to be bound by those things. And you're right, it has absolutely no standing as far as organizations like ours are concerned. But I think some of the things I heard yesterday, and I am going to sort of focus a bit more because on ARG, but was the fact that just having our position causes significant harms for others if you speak it, that somehow it's coercive, that they want to read into our language, just to say, shouldn't life be a fundamental right, the right to life be a fundamental right? Well, somehow or other you read into that language that you are shaming women, that you are making women feel unsafe, that you are emotionally traumatizing women. I mean, in the common sense, because that's where I am, right? I'm a very ordinary woman. So in the common sense of all of this, this makes no sense to me, because they are trying to get into our reasoning for putting those ads out. You know, all we're doing is asking the question, don't you think? Or in the educational work that we do, you know, well, this is this if you didn't know. But there seems to be this piece today that if you upset the public somehow or other, that the public have got a right not to be upset. And I would love to, if anybody can find that somewhere, I would be really happy to find it. Because they act, the Abortion Rights Coalition, and sorry, but the Guelph City to a further degree, acted as though if nobody likes, or some people don't like it, then it has to come down. Well, I mean, it really doesn't make any sense to normal, ordinary, people. And I believe with these set of ads, it's two opinions have now caused this for everybody. So I think we have to look at, who's pushing this idea. And I say I am so thankful for the help that we had from you, and because it just makes you not feel alone. So the arguments, I mean, ARPA was arguing that all we were considering were our own rights. Right? That's right off the bat. That's all these people are considering as their own rights, and that it would be, if they were limited, if our freedom of expression was limited, that it would be a minimal impact. Well, at the moment, we haven't got minimal impact in anywhere. We've got Canada Summer Jobs court cases coming up next week, right? And again, I have, I'll quote this. I hope you don't mind, Peter. As a direct result of our lobbying, we are proud to report that the federal funding to anti-choice groups will stop. That is Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada in summer 2017. So, we are being gradually closed out of the public square, which is a place we are able to be. And so for many reasons, this is a very, very important case. And I know all cases are, but this is for all of us. If you are going to be speaking something that a few people within your hearing don't like, and you can be closed down for that, well, Canada isn't Canada anymore, if you ask me.
Many of these issues, Jakki, people like us, pro-life, pro-family, pro-freedom advocates seem to be, like, people say, well, why do you have to bring that up? You're always, but the fact is the status quo, they don't need to bring it up because they're already running on government money. It's already being promoted through all the government channels, through education and the media. And so they don't have as much of a reason. If we don't bring it up, the world will not even know.
And I think, Rod, Carol sort of alluded to that, I believe, in her factum too, because she, as a majority, you have no need. You'd have no need to have that. Well, I shouldn't say, of course you do. You have a right to have your freedom of expression, but you don't need to actually defend it because it's out there. So at the moment, Canada is acting as though it is a pro-abortion country, right? From our government down. So it's so important that the voice of the minority, because that's what makes us a democracy, when we support those voices, whether we like them or whether we don't, is protected and should not and may not be trampled on the way they are trying to trample on us. So with the abortion rights,
and there's a lot of lip service to that. But it looks as though in reality, they're anti anyone who is opposed to abortion.
Yeah, but you know, again, and I have no problem with them being against what I believe. I really do not, because I think it makes life fun, to be honest with you. You know, I know these are very serious things, but you know, it's good because you hone your beliefs this way, and I think it's important. And then the public gets a chance to hear from that end to that end and everywhere in between, and then they can make their own minds up. But if you start silencing, now, this is about advertising. So if they silence our advertising, where do we go? Currently, with our big campaign on social media, we've been closed down by Google and Facebook. Okay, and we are fighting like anything with another issue. Now you've got the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada that has been instrumental in us losing some, the attestation. They didn't write it, although it wouldn't surprise me, for Canada Summer Jobs. They've been instrumental in the advertising bans and attacks, and they have a project where they tell their members, if you see a pro-life ad anywhere, complain. They've given them the ad standards thing to get that all done. So that's a strategy. And then with the the safe access, I do not like using that language, the bubble zones. Again, they claimed that how instrumental they've been. So this is the tip of a huge iceberg that we in pro-life have been facing, and it's really getting worse. And I think as people of faith, and I know, Peter, you asked me to do more about yesterday, but as people of faith, I absolutely believe that we need to be down on our knees and pray to understand how we fight back at this, how we do it together. Whether we agree with each other on lots of other things, we do agree that we should have the right to express what we believe, if it's not hate or criminal, in the public square.
And the Abortion Rights Coalition is trying to knock that out. And can you just tell us a little bit more about this organization that is obviously so vehemently opposed to what you and really all pro-lifers are doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, everywhere you turn, there is something from them. They've written a piece a few years ago that was very well responded to by I've forgotten his name now, God bless him. He did a marvelous response to it. Anyway, calling into question the misinformation that the crisis pregnancy centers give that are pro-life or Christian, right? There's that. They've got a big listing of all those. They've gone through all the pro-life groups, and they go on to Canada Revenue Agency, and you know, they're looking at how much they get in and what they don't get in and all of those things, because they want us, those of us with charitable status, to not have it anymore, because we speak they don't want. So there's another attack. And of course, with our current government, I mean, I'm sure he's a card-carrying member. I'm sure he is. But there's a whole other area that I know we haven't time to deal with today. But the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada is a friend, I'll quote that's what they say, of the National Abortion Federation, which has, I think it's somewhere in the region of 413 providers in Canada and the US. And that's an industry. Well, what is helpful for the abortion industry? To not have opposition, to silence those that would say anything, to not allow people to actually stand and say, I mean, we should be able to say, we don't think this is right. We don't think it should be happening here. But that within certain areas in Ontario, and I know a couple of other provinces, is criminal. You can't do that anymore. We can't say to these women, we are here, last ditch attempt, we are here, right? We can't do that. Well, that to me, and then of course, there they are opposing us in this, our advertising efforts here. So, you know, I think somebody needs to look at this whole connection between Abortion Rights Coalition Canada and the abortion industry and closing any opposition down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier.
So yeah, you're showing the fact of closed doors, et cetera, the bubble laws on the one hand, the restrictions on advertising on the other hand, and they're sort of saying, oh, you have freedom, you just can't do this and that.
Yeah, well, they want to tell us. You know,
ahead.
Peter, they want to tell us what to do. I know time's going, we should have 2 hours, or I know you don't want it, but with just a very simple ad, and this has got to be 10 years ago, a billboard, and it had a little 8-week-old fetal human child. And I forget what we wrote on it now, if I'm honest with you, but the wording doesn't matter. And I was having a rather heated argument, to be honest, with a gentleman representing a rather large billboard company. And he said to me at the end of this discussion, can you not find a gentler image? This is an 8-week developing human child that looks, if your heart doesn't break looking at that little one, I don't know what you are. A gentler image. So they want to tell us, they want to take our money, but they want to tell us what we can put on. And according to ARC, we should be pleased that the city didn't take all our ads down.
Yeah.
You know, why are we so upset that you've got a couple still up? Because we're not offended by those.
Probably, yeah, that's it. They found the ones that they complained about were the ones that probably are the most effective, that are going to win people's hearts and convince people who haven't thought about it, that the unborn, the preborn child has rights as well. You mentioned earlier that one of their complaints towards us in the court case was that we were only defending our own right to speak. That's absolutely untrue, because one of the signs itself said, what about her right to choose? I think it said, but the preborn will never have a right to make any choices whatsoever. And half of them are girls. And so it's completely legitimate to say, what about her right? But there's also one more right that is being ignored, and that is the right of women to have the information to make an informed choice, because some of them are going to be pushed down this dark alley. You know, they always talk about back alley abortions. They're being pushed down this dark hallway, I guess, towards a decision that they may later regret. But if nobody gives them the other information, they're going to make that decision without all the information they should have. And of course, right now, just touching on one other topic, Bill C-10 is Mr. Trudeau's efforts to close down the internet to ideas that he disagrees with. And of course, there's no doubt that pro-life views is going to be one of those areas that he would like to squelch any opportunity to comment.
Well, I think, Rod, we're getting more like, and I know people aren't going to like this, but I think we're more like China every day. He seems to like how the Chinese run things, and I think we're seeing that too. He needs to remember that he is supposed to be a prime minister of Canada, not a prime minister of pro-abortion Canada or pro-what I think Canada. And seriously, I think he's doing quite a disservice to the democracy in this country. And also, again, I think Peter said it's the lip service. It's the lip service.
Yeah.
And you would be in trouble with the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada, because you said only women can get pregnant. And according to their lawyer, it's women and people who can get, it's women and people who can get pregnant. Now, I'm not quite sure. So you're either a woman or a people. But again, it's just the nonsense of today. Not saying you don't love everybody that's going through things, but we seem to be believing so much that we know is not true.
Absolutely. And they talk about our ads being misleading, but what can be more misleading than saying that there are other people besides women who can get pregnant? You know, it's just ridiculous.
And lastly, Rod, because Peter is saying, I know, but that you raised it just now, this whole idea that you cannot you cannot have a people who understand issues if they don't have full expression of their full and free expression of their opinion. And you cannot have a balanced or an educated or informed opinion if you can't listen to all the arguments. So, there's two pieces of that freedom of expression. So anyway, poor Peter is trying to get off.
In the time we have left, I want to just have each of us maybe give a couple of thoughts based on what we heard yesterday. Maybe our thoughts about the judges, or about the sort of the atmosphere of the judicial review. We can't predict the future. I'm not asking you to, but what did you think of it overall? I'll start with you, Jakki, and we'll just have a couple of.
I think one of the things that always strikes me is that people can actually have such different opinions and be presenting such different opinions, and they're still so friendly with each other. It's so formally nice. Sorry, it just amazes me. There's no emotions. It's also formally nice. I think I won't name them, but two of the judges I felt, I believe, seemed to be really sifting through what was going on. I was pleased with some of the remarks. One, and I could be totally wrong, but I felt was definitely not with us. But maybe it was just more understanding needed. The process, I think, is pretty amazing, to be honest with you, and everybody gets their opportunity to say what they want to say. So I'm hoping that we'll have divine inspiration here, and that God will just open all three hearts to just do the right thing, and that would be to judge for us and for freedom of expression of everybody in this country, no matter what they want to say, as long as it's not criminal or hate.
What was your impression, Rod?
Well, there were so many things that were said over the course of those several hours, but I think they kept coming back to the charter, implications of the charter. I mean, there's so many angles to this whole question about abortion particularly, but the city seemed to be pinning its hopes on the idea that it had stated that any ads would have to be according to the code of the Ad Standards Council, and I think the good argument that was made in response to that was, well, whatever Ad Standards puts out cannot, they don't have to keep to the charter because they're not a government body, but the City of Guelph does, and so the Ads Council cannot legitimately override the provisions of the charter that protect the right of free expression. So I hope that the three judges all really focus on the idea that they need to stand with the charter on this issue. The city has its, I'm sure they don't want to get squeezed anymore between, public opinions, contrary public opinions, but the charter still stands. If the charter doesn't stand, then Canada is really in trouble. And so this is a very important case. And I certainly hope that as they think about this overnight, these judges do take the charter into full account.
Yeah, I think that's a good place in a sense to leave it. My concern would be that if they sort of take the charter into account but twist it, that would be a really bad precedent. It is possible, but I agree that two of the judges did seem to be asking the kinds of questions that I would have hoped they would have been asking, and the other one asked good questions as well, but seemed to be a little bit more fixated on some of the technicalities and not necessarily on the big picture. That was my impression, and again, we don't have the outcome at the time of this recording, but we will be praying about it and trust that all of you who are listening will. And Jakki, is there anything that you wanted to share in closing? Our time is drawing to an end.
You know what? Not really. I just would encourage everybody to keep the faith. You know, we go through these things when you're defending right and good. And, you know, Jesus told us that they hated me before you. So, and Pilate wanted to wash his hands of it, right? And he's gone down. Everybody knows who Pilate is. So we're just praying that that these judges don't allow Canada and in the form of Guelph City Council to wash their hands of this. So. Well
said. Well said. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Jakki, Rod, and we hope that you'll join us again for another edition of CHP Talks.
Thank you.
God bless.